Today we will begin the process of applying the paper-backed glued embroidery to the prepared box. I am going to start here with the long sides of the box, on which the long front side of the box, one side at a time, Katie, on which I have marked the exact center right at the top, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this line right here is the exact center of the box, and then it folds right about here. The first step, however, is to get this cut down into something manageable. I've made sure that my mat is clean before I turn this over, and now I'm going to get to the process of cutting this down. You'll have seen me use pencil for the most part so far, but I am now switching to micron pen because I am left-handed and I have smeared pencil on my hands one too many times to want to have pencil anywhere near embroidery. So I am going to measure the depth of the box, which I have at just over 4 3/16. And thankfully I can see through here. This is the bottom. And oh, wow, I really did get this quite close. Gonna mark 4 3/16 at the top, which I may have to cut down a little more. Ideally, you want your top edge to stop just short of the actual top of the box, and that gives you nice space to then apply your trim over so that it lies perfectly flat. You'll get a better illustration of this when we actually get to that point. So 3/16. And now I'm going to draw a cutting line. Actually, I'm gonna check that again. Give me 1 second. I have drawn a top cutting line here. However, this proved to be a little more difficult than I expected. I think the better process might be to trim the bottom, as I am going to do here, and then line this up, line your stitching up with the bottom edge of the box, fold it, and then measure from your fold line. Actually, seeing through the back here didn't work particularly well, and I think that would probably be the smarter way to do it. But I have cut lines, and I am just going to go ahead and cut all the way around here on my top and bottom lines. Okay, so I've cut top and bottom lines initially, and then I just cut where the paper ends at the sides to get rid of some of the excess fabric. I'm going to try test fitting this. I'm looking at my cut. I'm thinking that it's probably not right, so I'm gonna need to adjust this. But what I'm going to do first is mime the process that I am telling you to do, since my initial guess here didn't work out too well for me. And then hopefully that will help illustrate things. So I've got my mark here at the top, and I'm going to line that up with this center line using my ruler, trying to make sure that this is all square here. And then I am just trying to move this right to the bottom edge. I want that fold to be right at those bottom stitches. So I'm just lightly pressing that, and then I'm going to fold this more neatly so that I really get a clean, sharp fold at those bottom stitches. Okay. So now I'm going to place this again, lining up at my center mark. Needs to go a little. And so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to check the positioning by seeing the relative placements from the corners of these two lines. I want them to be roughly equidistant, which is actually turning out to be a little difficult. You can use a ruler to check. I'm just using the eye test here. Okay, so I'm noting that although this is pretty close to the top, I want this to come down just a little bit. So I'm going to make one more cut here at the top, and then also going to check my side fit while I'm at it. So I am going to turn under this entire bottom edge. Again, I want the fold to be right at these bottom line stitches. I'm just gonna finger press. Once I'm really certain of my placement, I'm gonna take my bone folder and get a really sharp fold all down this line. But right now I'm still dry fitting. So I'm turning it over to the front to check that I really am at those bottom stitches, checking my fold. Looks good. And then I'm gonna do this other side. This pattern is a little unusual in that you have such a precise bottom line which orients your pattern. This won't always be necessary with another design. I certainly haven't had to go to these kinds of lengths with any of the other box styles I've done. It is the blessing and a curse of such a linear pattern. You have very clear lines to guide you in your placement, but then your lines also need to be quite exact. Okay, so this is what I think my fit is going to be, and I'm just going to check by measuring how far I am side to those lines. And yep, that is just about even. So I'm going to tightly fold, indicating that this is my final positioning. And then I'm going to pinch the corner there, like this. And that will give me a guide for how I miter these bottom edges. I'll go back and cut those in a minute. So now I've got that, and then I am going to check the sides. So if I push this all the way up, I can see that that's pretty close in terms of where I want this to be. I'm going to cut down here just a little bit. Oh, looks like I should have actually followed my original line, which was correct. So So I'm just taking my scissors and I'm just clipping just a little bit off the top here because my fit is very close, but it's not quite perfect. Okay, and I'm gonna go back and check this again on this side. So if I line that up at the bottom, that looks really good. And if I push this, yeah, I can see that a little bit needs to come off the top here. And definitely here. So I'm going to cut a little bit more off the top here. Okay, so to the side, you can see this is about how much I cut off. Since I eyeballed rather than drawing a line, this isn't perfectly straight. However, that's okay. This will be hidden by the trim. It's generally better to use a ruler, but I'm experienced enough that I felt like I could eyeball it. So this is definitely a case of do as I say and not do as I do. Sorry. Okay, so I've dry fit the front. I'm pretty satisfied with my placement. And then in terms of fitting the edges, we're going to make these exact folds. Once I come back to that point, I'm gonna actually take just a little more off there. And then recheck. You can really never check your work too many times, especially when you've got such a strong linear pattern where if things are skewed or wrong, you really are going to notice. So that's looking pretty good to me. And oh, right there, a little more should come off. Okay, that's good. And then now I am going to, you know what? I'm not actually going to miter the corners. I was going to make the cuts in the bottom so that it could lie flat, but I think the best way to go about this, it has been a couple of years since I've done a wraparound box of this style, so I'm trying to remember my process. I think the most sensible thing to do here is just to glue this front piece, let it dry, and then have a really good anchor on your placement before I go messing around with the bottom. So I've got my preliminary fitted piece, and I'm going to move that to the side. I'm going to apply glue directly to the front of the box, and I'm also going to have a lightly dampened paper towel and one of my precision spatulas ready to take off any excess glue at the top edge. If this were a box where I were doing a single panel gluing rather than wraparound, I would cut my rectangular piece for the front of the box, and then I would apply the glue directly to the paper backed embroidery. But just given the way we're fitting this, this is an instance of where I would like to apply the glue to the box and then lie my embroidery over it so that I can place things exactly as I need to because we are only going to, at this time, glue the front of this piece. What I'm going to do here is place the front, and then I am going to lay it on a towel, a flour sack towel, and then press it under one book. You only need fairly light weights here. You just need to make sure that it bonds to the box, and let it dry for 6 hours, and then come back and do the 2 short sides. Scrape off the extra I'm seeing right there at the sides. And then I am just carefully applying glue at the top here. Wipe that off since I went over. Okay, that looks good to me. And now I'm going to go back and place this again. This is why my folds are really helpful, because I can just use those as my positioning guidelines. Making sure that the bottom's pressed up very neatly. So that everything is correctly aligned. And I'm going to take my spatula and just make sure I've got any excess glue here at the top. Great. So that's the front side glued, and now I am going to arrange this to dry for 6 hours. So I am laying down a towel, then my flour sack towel, smooth that out, and I am going to put this face down, and put a book on top of this to weight it. Hold on, I didn't get a book. Okay, so I've got just one hardback set down over this. The sides here are wide enough that this should stay up on its own. You can always brace it on either side with books to make sure that it lies flat and sits neatly on its side while it dries for 6 hours, and then we are going to come back and do the short sides. So I have let the front dry under weights. It's looking good and smooth and stable. So now I am going to glue the sides on. The first thing I'm going to do here is just give this a little run over with my bone folder. Do make sure that this is clean before you do this. You don't want to transfer anything onto your embroidery. Always be very careful with both your tools and your workspace when you've got your fabric on here. And then I'm just going to sharpen the crease there as well. I am checking my fit. Looks good. And so what I've decided I'm going to do here is I'm going to glue on the short sides, let them dry. Tomorrow I will glue on the back, and then I will deal with all of this on the bottom all at once so that it can all dry together under weight. So now I've got this side, and I am sharpening my creases with the folder. I'm actually going to pull that up and just give that a nice little sharp. Oh, sorry. It would help if I did these things on camera. I am sorry about sometimes having things happen off camera. I am new to tutorials, and so this is taking a little adjustment. So again, I'm just checking my fit. This is essentially last chance island before glue goes on. So you just want to make sure that everything is as perfect and as well fitted as you can get it, which it's looking pretty good. So I feel like I am ready to glue. Got good sharp corners everywhere, everything's lining up. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fold this back and then apply glue to the box as I did with the front. Just gonna go very gently at these sides so as to not disturb my glue job on the front. I'm going to take the glue all the way down to the bottom. Sure, I've got plenty there. Smoothing it out. So when stuff goes over the sides, just run a finger or a spatula along it and clean it up. I've got a smooth, even coating of glue here. Just going to wipe off the hand that I touched the yes paste with because I don't want that on the front of my embroidery. And then I'm going to line this all up, making sure that it's tight to the bottom, that I've got a nice line and that everything's where it's supposed to be. Which looks like it is. You know, with boxes, there's always a moment of truth. I've planned, I've made my pattern, I dry fit, but it's always a really good feeling when the glue goes on and it actually works. So now I'm going to repeat the process with this side, applying glue directly to the prepared box. So the glue has been applied. Sorry, I'm just moving everything out of the way. That's the other thing I wanted to mention. Once you are done with your glue, get it out of the way so that you don't have an accidental mishap. That can happen, or at least it happens to someone as clumsy as I am. I have excellent fine motor skills, but I am just so clumsy you would not believe. I trip over my own feet at least once a day and usually more like twice. So as I did with the other side, I'm smoothing everything down and making sure that the bottom is fitting exactly, that everything is perfectly lined up, smoothing it out, and that everything's aligned and placed on the box as I would like it to be, which it is. It looks like my blocking job was successful, that everything's lining up correctly, and I'm pretty pleased. So now I am going to go ahead and put this under weights. Going to lay down my towel. And my flour sack towels. Since I am applying weight to essentially two sides simultaneously, I'm going to use 2 towels here. So I've put that down. That's all set. Grab the second towel. This helps cushion your stitching and make sure that you're not flattening anything out too much. The reason you can do 2 sides at once here is because you're going to put weight on this side, but it's pushing both down simultaneously, which means that you are applying weight to both sides while they dry. So I've laid a second folded up flour sack towel over this side. And now I'm just going to drop my handy Norton Anthology right here on top. The good thing about being an English major is that I have tons of bricks of books of all sizes, which is perfect for waiting things as I dry. So I'm going to let this dry overnight and then come back tomorrow to do the back piece. So today we are going to resume the gluing of the bottom of the box. I have let this dry overnight. As you can see, it's all looking really good. And now what I need to do is cut and glue down these little overlapping pieces on the back. So this one, gosh, I was apparently not very careful about just clipping those ends when I cut down the large piece, because this is about what you would want. It is a 1/2 inch, so that's already cut, and then it's also partly adhered. It apparently added a little bit of glue escaping from the long side there, and I'm just going to cut into this a little bit because this piece just laps over to provide a clean edge here, and you want minimal bulk on the back because you are then going to be folding under the sides of the back embroidery piece. So I've cut that like so, and then I am going to repeat this for the other side. And actually, to mark the line, I'm going to get my ceramic pencil, which is my preferred marking for fabric, but since this is going to be cut off, you can really use anything that you like, a regular pencil, micron pen, whatever. So I've marked 1/2 inch from the side, and then I'm going to miter this, slightly go up here, and then cut. You don't want to get too far under 1/2 inch here because there needs to be enough that this will securely lie flat and once it's glued. A very tiny piece, like if you just had 1/8 of an inch, this would resist gluing flat, which is really much more important than having less bulk on the back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just, the other thing I need to know, I'm sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained today, and I'm sure it's showing on this video, which I apologize for. Now that I have embroidery on the box, I'm getting very close to a complete finish, and I want to be very careful with everything I'm doing to make sure this isn't damaged in any way. And that means my workspace has to be totally clean. I washed my silicone mat last night. I washed my cutting mat last night. You just don't want there to be any kind of transfer onto your embroidery. It would just be awful. And as an additional precaution, I'm going to lay my clean flour sack towel down and set most of the embroidery on it, and then just have this little bit poking out to apply glue to. Open up my yes paste. I'm going to take one of my smaller spatulas. I'm going to just put some glue on there. And then repeat the same for the other side. Okay. Push these down. very flat. There's that so you can see. So I now have both overlapping bits on the back glued down, and I am going to wait these to dry while I prepare the back. I am not going to give this or the back folds, as we'll see, a full 4 to 6 hour drying time, because all of these are going to be under weights very soon. They can all dry together. So I'm just gonna give this a quick initial press while I work on preparing the back piece for gluing. So I've got the back piece here, which I am now going to prepare for gluing. I'd also like to note that I just washed my hands while I was doing this, because it is impossible to take too many precautions at this stage. Wash your hands frequently. You don't want any stray glue, any stray dirt when you're handling your embroidery. And at this late stage, you know, once you get this far, if you do make a mistake, don't beat yourself up. It happens. I've done it many times. It just feels terrible to be this close and then to have a stray dab of glue on your hand and smear it on your work. I've done it. If you watched my first episode of my floss tube, I pointed out some glue smears on the blue box. This is where they came from. It was from handling the embroidery and manipulating it as I was gluing it on the box, getting a little bit of glue on my hands or on the edges as I was gluing the embroidery to the box and having it smear on the front, which I hated. Although again, if this happens, they're small errors. It's part of how you learn, and don't beat yourself up about it. I can't help beating myself up about it because I am a crazy perfectionist, but you know, that's just kind of my issue to deal with. You should be more sane than I am. So here I have the back of my box, and after the difficulties in getting good lines working from the back on the long sides of the box, I've decided to draw top and bottom cut lines in right on the front, although not the sides, that would show. So here, this is the bottom edge of the box, but like on the sides, there needs to be a portion to roll under on the bottom to conceal the cut edge, which was 1 inch on the other sides, but this piece of paper is a little smaller, so I'm going to go ahead and do this at a little closer to 7/8 using the bottom edge of this motif as my guideline. So I'm drawing a line in with my ceramic pencil, and then I am going to cut it. Also going to try and make sure I cut this thing on camera, because I'm trying to be better about not doing things out of frame. I am sorry about all my little flubs. These are my first ever tutorials, and there is a definite learning curve here, but I hope you are learning everything that you need to do a box from them. The other thing I'd like to point out is that some of these finishing things are specific to a wraparound style box. If you are doing a more traditional style box where every panel is cut and trimmed individually, you don't bother with this junk. You measure out the size of the rectangle in your piece, you cut it just a touch smaller than the actual thing, you glue it directly on, and then you glue trim around every cut edge. Very simple. The contortions I'm going through here with folding and rolling under edges, that's all specific to the wraparound style. So I've got my bottom edge cut, and now I'm going to place my top edge, and I'm going to use my pattern to help me here since the box itself is underweights right now. The back, the rolled over sides are gluing. So I am measuring this at just under 4 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to mark from the bottom edge of the motif 4 1/8 of an inch, Make sure that's all squared up. And that's going to be my top cut line. And I'm just going to check this by laying my pattern over it. And yes, always check and double check before you cut, because these are not reversible actions. So now I am lining up and I'm drawing my full cut line across the top. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut this down. So I've cut the top and bottom, and because I do not have, that is looking a little skewed to me. I'm actually gonna have to cut this down right here a little more. Always just use your pattern to help you check your work. And then of course I'm going to check this again once I pull the box back up from underweights to make sure that everything's fitting really well. You can always keep cutting down if you need to. You cannot undo your cuts, so be conservative here and keep using your pattern and the box itself to help you check your work. Now, because I don't have obvious cut lines on the sides here, unlike the bottom where I had this motif to help me place it, I am going to use my pattern to help me. I want 1/2 of an inch ease here, which I will then fold under. However, the edges of my pattern are larger than 1/2 an inch, so I need to cut these down so that I can place my ruler right over this and draw with it on. So cutting. Okay, so I've just cut down the sides of the pattern. I'm gonna place this again. And to check my orientation, I'm going to see that these two letters, which are the outside ones, are approximately the same distance from the edge, which they are. Okay, eye test worked really well there. So now that I've got this all aligned, I'm going to lay my ruler down with 1/2 of an inch at this side edge and draw that in on both sides. And now I'm going to cut. Okay, I have the box back and I've laid it down on my flour sack towel just to be extra careful here, even though I know my cutting mat is clean. I cleaned it last night. I haven't done anything on it since. I just feel like I can't be too careful at this point. Please note the bottom sides here are all still free. We are going to deal with those all at the same time. So the first thing I'm going to do is check. And now I am going to start folding bottom edge here, which will help me with my placement. So I've made a preliminary fold, and now I'm going to actually press that nicely. My ruler to check that I'm about right here. Sort of. It's looking a little skewed actually. And it is. Yeah, this is a little wrong. Okay, so I'm gonna just try and correct for that. Okay, now that looks better to me. And then I'm gonna take this and use the folder and run it down to make a nice crisp fold. Got my bottom edge in. And then now I am going to deal with folding in the edges. So as you saw before, I marked a 1/2 inch from the sides as my guidelines. I'm now going to mark that on the back to help me fold here, since I don't have like a helpful edge of a motif to give me a line. And I'm going to go a little scant to account for the bulk of the fold, so a little less than 1/2 inch. I can always fold over more space later if I need to, but I don't want this to be too small. And then I'm gonna hold this up against thing to make sure that that's about right, and it actually does look a little too short for me. Hold that up to the light. Yeah, those lines are not showing through, so I can redraw them. I want this to be a little wider. And now I'm going to start folding. You can place your ruler actually and use that to help you to get a straight line to fold against, like so. So I've got my first folds. I'm thinking these might not be right, so I'm going to check them against the box. And yes, this is just a little too big. I guess I should have gone with my first lines after all, but that's fine. I can just refold here. World is not gonna end. So I'm gonna refold using my original guidelines. Again, I'm placing the ruler at those lines to help me guide my folding. This one's proving a little tougher because lines are close together, so I'm just getting my nail in at the line where I see it, which I know this is obscured by the top edge of this fabric and you can't see it, but what I'm doing is I'm pressing my nail right here against that inner line, and I'm using that to help guide me as I fold. And I'm gonna check again. And look, that is very good. Although, I think, yeah, this is not quite straight. Do you see that? That's a, so if I press this against the bottom, this is actually a little skewed, so this needs to come in here a little bit and out here. Okay, so recheck. This is fiddly, but getting a correct fit is just so important. If you take the time now, it's just going to make your final product so much better. Okay, Yeah, that looks good to me. There is extra bulk here because you've essentially got 4 layers. Well, 1, 2, 3. You've got 3 layers, but that really can't be helped. If that really bothers you, one thing you could do is glue extra layers of paper here in between the folds to bring it up. I actually brought out extra backing paper, ruler, X-Acto knife. I was thinking I might try that, but I am quite honestly really just ready to be done here. So I have decided that this is the back and I'm just gonna be okay with that. But if this is bothering you, that's one thing you could do to try and mitigate that. Okay, so the other thing I need to deal with before I glue this on is the corners. This double layer here, that can't be under the bottom, so I need to clip at the fold line on both sides, right up to that fold. And then I'm going to miter the corners. I may need to do a deeper cut once I get to the bottom, but I'm gonna be a little conservative for now, because again, I can always cut more down later. Okay, that looks good. This is now ready to glue, so I'm gonna do that. Okay, so I have thought about how to do this, and I've decided that I'm going to apply glue across the full thing here, fold down the edges, and then add a little extra to the fold over. That seems to me to be the most sensible way to go about this. And then I'm going to try and keep my glue very neat at the bottom edge because I don't want it spilling over onto the bottom. I'm going to glue all the bottom edges at the same time and let them dry so that they can all be weighted in the same direction at once. So I'm trying to be very neat at the bottom edge. I'm just applying my glue. One thing I do, I think kind of unconsciously, is you'll usually see me holding down a corner or some part of the thing, part of the embroidery or the paper or whatever it is that I'm gluing with a finger, and that's to try and keep it from shifting while I'm gluing it, because the silicone mat helps with that, but it doesn't completely alleviate it. Okay, so I need a little glue at the side here. And then I am going to fold this. Run the folder over it to get a really sharp crease line. You can see there's a little popping out right there. And then I'm going to just add a little extra glue on top of that linen so that this glues really nicely. But not too much. Go lightly here. You do not want it coming out the sides when you press down. Okay, that's got glue on it. I've got a little glue on my fingertips, so I'm gonna go wash my hands and then bring up the box to apply it. Okay, so to flatten everything out as much as possible, I'm going to go over the edges with the folder one more time. And then again, after I've got the glue on the, after I've got the back on the box. Okay. So I'm placing that, lining up first the sides, and then I'm going to pull this down so that it's really sitting flush at this bottom edge, like we did with the sides. Okay, and see, this is what I was talking about. You can see that double layer, and this will become more apparent once it's been pressed out. So if you do want to add a couple extra layers of paper just in between these folded bits to kind of raise that to the same level, you can. It doesn't hugely bother me. You know, it's just kind of the price you pay for having the other sides be so neatly wrapped around. You have to conceal your cut edges somewhere, and it's best for them to go on the back where you will see the least of it. So the back is now glued on, and this is ready to be weighted, and I'm going to let this dry for, I think, about 12 hours just to make sure that this is really secure and that the weights have flattened out these side bits as much as possible. And then I will bring it back up and glue under these edges and glue on the bottom and install the feet in the final video.